Mr. Sen is former chief statistician of India. He'll talk to us over expectations from the budget and priorities of the budget. Welcome, Mr. Pronab Sen, to our budget show. On growth concerns, should budget continue to focus on capex, or do you think that private investment has revived in the economy?
Well, private investment is in the process of reviving. It almost certain that investment by the corporate sector has certainly revived. There's very strong corporate sector investment growth. The non-corporate sector, which is your MSME sector, the revival in capex is just about beginning now. It's been only maybe 3-4 months since it started, so it's at a very nascent stage. So that would require continued support.
In this regard, you talked about fiscal deficit. Should government continue fiscal consolidation in the sense that in the current year's budget, the government said that they'll try to bring down fiscal deficit to 4.5% in the next 2 years. Should they continue to lay focus on that?
Well, 4.5% I don't think should be taken as carved in stone. But at the moment, for the current year, the target was 6.4%. Right now, to bring it down to 4.5%, you're talking about a cut in fiscal deficit of 1% of GDP every year. Now, that is a very, very substantial amount. I would imagine that the glide path downwards should be continued, but I think it should not be in such large chunks. So maybe somewhere between 0.5 to 0.6% maximum they should be cutting. So if going from 6.4 to maybe 5.8, 5.75, something like that.
When India Inc. and economists met finance minister, they suggested that personal income tax rates should be reduced to revive the economy. What is your take on that?
Well, if you are perceiving a consumption problem, then that is a way out. But if you look at the recent data, consumption does not seem to be doing badly at all. In fact, in the Q2 results, which just came out a few days ago, consumption grew at 9.5%. I mean, a 9.5% growth in consumption should be able to support GDP growth of above 7%, provided investment plays along. So I don't think there is any compelling need to cut the personal income tax rate. But that's one side of the story. There is another side to it, which is that one of the things that has happened in India is that on the production side, if I look at corporates, that is companies incorporated under the Companies Act, and non-corporates, the corporates are facing a tax rate, which is the corporate tax rate, which is about 23%. On the other hand, the non-corporates are facing the personal income tax rate, which is about 42% at the peak. Yeah. Now, that is a very large gap. And what it does is it puts the non-corporate sector at a serious disadvantage relative to the corporate. Right? I think there's a need to level that playing field. Now, to level that playing field, if we have to bring that 42% down to something a little more reasonable, that may not be a bad thing. But you also have to know that you're then talking about the peak rate of income tax. And that will cause a political problem for the government, because if it cuts the peak rates and leaves everything else unchanged, you're going to have everybody accusing the government of favoring the rich, which politically would be very difficult to say.
But given the fact that COVID has widened the income disparity, will that be a correct move?
That would be a wrong move. In fact, under these circumstances, that would be just about as wrong as it can get.
So what can be done? I mean, should it be cut or not? Peak rate of personal
Well,
income tax.
at the moment, I wouldn't fiddle around with it. I think the government should leave those rates unchanged and perhaps look at, so I would say on the tax side, the government shouldn't do too much. It may want to actually raise taxes a bit more on the customs duty side, because I think with the global economy softening, we are going to face a lot of threat from imports. So the government may want to give a little bit of cushion to Indian producers. I think the focus of the government in this budget really should be on the expenditure side, not so much on the taxation side.
You mean capex, or you're talking about revenue?
Well, a bit of both. The damage from the COVID continues to exist among a lot of the poorer categories of our people. And I think a little bit of continuation of that support the government has been giving is not a bad thing to do. Moreover, the government has actually increased its capex. I think it's on track for that. And I think that process should continue. But as I said, that when you're talking about capex, you really need to be very clear about what kind of capex are you talking about. So there is a huge difference between building a superhighway and building a rural road. Okay, the superhighways are usually constructed by very large companies using very mechanized construction technologies. Village roads are created by local contractors using very labor intensive. Now, given the kind of pattern of income disparity that you talked about, it's the rural road type of capex that the government should actually be pushing.
Do you think that schemes like free food grain to 800 million people, that should be continued beyond December?
Well, that depends. As of now, the food grain stocks look a little weak, but then the prognosis for the Rabi harvest is very good. But that's going to come only in March. The harvest is going to happen only then.
Do you mean to say that there should be more money given to Manrega like of schemes?
Almost certainly. I mean, the reports from the field are fairly clear that the demand for Manrega way exceeds the ability of the state governments to provide work. Now, the state governments are putting the entire blame on the center, saying the center is not giving them enough funds. Whereas the center turns around and says that the state governments don't have enough projects. But this is a fruitless fight. The fact of the matter is that the people who went back to the villages during 20 and 21, the reverse migration, they are still in the villages and they don't have work there. The villages were already had excess workers. And then you had this additional lot who moved back. They need something to keep them occupied. And Manrega is one of the very, very few, in fact, it may be the only instrument that can occupy them.
But there is a distress in urban areas also, and there were talks about launching a scheme similar to Manrega in urban area. Do you think budget could try that?
Well, it could, but the point is that before you do anything of that sort, one of the reasons it hasn't happened, by the way, it's been talked about, I think, since 2012 or thereabouts, ever since Manrega was recognized as a success. The problem was in designing an urban equivalent of Manrega, right? And we still don't have a really workable blueprint. And in the absence of a blueprint for the government to actually do something in a hurry, may be counterproductive.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Sen, for talking to us.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views, and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, and LinkedIn.